A small boy in a thin sweater approached a Mafia boss outside his casino, shivering in the snow. "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night. She works for you." What the boss didn't know, his most loyal courier had just survived 3 days refusing to betray him. And he was about to walk into a blizzard to prove loyalty flows both ways. The snow fell like broken glass that night. Domenico Valeri stepped out of his black Mercedes, his leather shoes crunching against fresh powder that had already buried the casino's front steps. He hated winter, hated the cold, hated how it made everything slower, the cars, the deals, the blood when it left a body. But business didn't stop for weather. Mr. Valeri, his head of security, Anton, appeared at his elbow with an umbrella. "The Bergamo delegation is waiting in the Rose Room. They brought the contracts." Domenico nodded, brushing snowflakes from his charcoal coat. The casino rose behind them like a frosted crown, 5 stories of marble and gold, his empire's beating heart. Tonight's deal would expand his shipping routes into northern Italy.
Clean money. Clean future.
He was 3 steps from the entrance when he saw him. A child.
Small.
Maybe 8 years old.
No coat.
Just a thin red sweater with a cartoon character on it, now soaked through. The boy stood between 2 of Domenico's guards, shivering so hard his teeth clattered. "Boss, we tried to turn him away," one guard started. "Sir," the boy interrupted, his voice tiny but determined. "My mom didn't come home last night." Domenico stopped. The world seemed to stop with him. "She works for you," the boy continued, ice crystals clinging to his dark eyelashes. "Her name is Lucia Marchetti. She drives the packages. She always comes home. Always." But she didn't. The name hit Domenico like a hammer. Lucia Marchetti.
Courier.
Reliable. Quiet. Had worked his northern routes for 3 years without a single mistake. He'd personally approved her hiring because she had something most people in his world lacked: genuine loyalty, not the kind bought with fear or money. "When did you last see her?" Domenico asked, crouching down to the boy's level. "Yesterday morning. She said she had a special delivery. Mountain route. She kissed my forehead and said she'd bring me hot chocolate when she got back." The boy's lip trembled. "But she never came back. And she always comes back." Anton leaned close to Domenico's ear. "Boss, the Bergamo people. Tell them to wait." Domenico stood, pulling off his coat and draping it over the boy's shoulders. It swallowed him completely. "What's your name?"
Marco.
"Marco. When did your mother leave?" 6 in the morning. She had the blue case. The locked 1-inch. Domenico's jaw tightened. Blue cases were priority shipments, weapons components, usually. Sensitive. High value. The kind of delivery that required his most trusted people. "Anton, pull Lucia Marchetti's route logs." Now Domenico put a hand on Marco's shoulder, guiding him toward the entrance. "And get this boy some dry clothes and food." "What about the meeting?" "They can wait 10 minutes or they can leave." "I don't care which." Inside, the casino hummed with controlled chaos, slot machines singing, roulette wheels spinning, dealers shuffling cards with mechanical precision. Domenico led Marco past it all, through a concealed door behind the bar, up a private elevator to his office on the 5th floor. The room was all dark wood and darker secrets. A wall of monitors showed every corner of his empire: the casino floor, the parking garage, the loading docks, a dozen other properties across the city. Domenico sat Marco in a leather chair so large the boy's feet didn't touch the ground. "Hot chocolate?" Domenico asked, moving to a small bar cart. Marco nodded, still shaking. Anton burst in 3 minutes later with a tablet and a towel. "Route logs, boss." "And I pulled surveillance." Domenico wrapped the towel around Marco's shoulders, then took the tablet. His eyes scanned the data rapidly. "Lucia Marchetti, route assignment number 4721. Departure, 6:15, destination, Bergamo warehouse number 3. Estimated arrival, 14:30. Last GPS signal, 11:47, Mountain Pass, Route 470. Status, signal lost. 11:47, Domenico muttered.
That's
18 hours ago. Storm hit the mountains around noon yesterday, Anton said. Could be weather interference. Or she's dead, said a voice from the doorway. Domenico didn't turn. He knew that voice. Vincent Corso, his lieutenant. Young, ambitious, always smiling with too many teeth. Vincent. Boss, with respect, Lucia missed her delivery window. No check-in. No distress call. In our world, that means one of two things. She crashed or she ran. Vincent stepped into the office, his expensive suit catching the light. Either way, we need to move past it. The Bergamo people are getting impatient. My mom doesn't run, Marco said suddenly, his small voice cutting through the room like a blade. She would never run. She always comes home. Vincent barely glanced at the boy. Kid, your mother was carrying 50,000 euros worth of merchandise. People do stupid things for that kind of money. Domenico finally turned, and something in his expression made Vincent take a step back. Her vehicle, Domenico said quietly. Where is it? Anton tapped the tablet. GPS puts it on Route 470. Mountain Pass. But boss, that road is completely snowed in now. Emergency services can't even get through. If we want to reach it, we'd need snowmobiles. A helicopter if the weather clears. Domenico was already moving toward his private closet, pulling out winter gear. Contact our people in Bergamo. Tell them the meeting is postponed 24 hours. You can't be serious, Vincent said. You're going to cancel a €1 million deal to chase a missing courier? In a blizzard? Domenico pulled on a thick jacket, checking his shoulder holster. Lucia Marchetti has worked for me for 3 years. In that time, she's completed 417 deliveries. Perfect record. She doesn't run, and she doesn't fail. People change when they see opportunity. No, Domenico turned, and his voice dropped to something cold and final. People reveal who they've always been when tested. Lucia's been tested 417 times. I know exactly who she is. He looked down at Marco, still bundled in the towel and coat. The boy's eyes were red, but no tears fell. Strong kid. Your mother's winter shortcut, Domenico said. You mentioned she has one. Do you know it?
Marco nodded slowly.
The old logging road. She showed me once. Said it saves 40 minutes, and the police never patrol it. Can you show me where it starts? Yes. Vincent laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. You're taking the kid? Into a blizzard? To find a woman who's probably bleeding out in a ditch or halfway to Switzerland with your money? Domenico walked past Vincent without answering. At the door, he paused. Anton, assemble a team. 2 vehicles, winter equipment, medical supplies. We leave in 20 minutes, he glanced back at Vincent. You're in charge of the casino until I return. Try not to steal too much. The elevator descended in silence. Marco looked up at Domenico with something like awe. You believe me, the boy whispered. I believe your mother, Domenico replied. And if she's in trouble, I'm going to find her. What he didn't say, what he couldn't say yet, was that 18 hours in winter mountains meant Lucia was either captured or dead. There was no third option. And if someone had taken her, they'd made a fatal mistake. Nobody touched Domenico Valeri's people. Nobody. The war room hummed with tension. Domenico stood before the wall of monitors, his fingers moving across a digital map while Anton and 3 of his most trusted men waited in silence. Marco sat in the corner, wrapped in a borrowed winter coat 3 sizes too large, watching everything with frightened eyes. Pull up every camera between here and Bergamo, Domenico ordered. Traffic cams, security feeds, gas stations. Everything. Anton's fingers flew across the keyboard. Boss, that's over 200 miles of mountain roads. It'll take hours to review. Then we start now. The screens flickered to life, showing grainy footage of highways and intersections. Domenico's eyes tracked each frame with surgical precision, looking for any sign of Lucia's black sedan. There, he pointed at a timestamp. 6:23, highway entrance. That's her vehicle. The footage showed Lucia's car merging onto the northbound highway, moving steadily through light morning traffic. Normal. Unremarkable. Next checkpoint, Domenico said. They jumped forward 30 minutes. The sedan appeared again at a mountain toll booth, Lucia's face barely visible through the windshield as she handed cash to the attendant. She looks calm, Anton observed. Not stressed. Not running. Because she wasn't planning to run, Domenico said flatly. Keep going. The next hour of footage showed nothing unusual. Lucia's car maintaining steady speed, taking the proper exits, following her assigned route perfectly. Then, at 11:34, something changed. Stop, Domenico leaned closer to the screen. What's that? The image showed Lucia's sedan at a fork in the road. Instead of continuing on the main highway toward Bergamo, she turned onto a smaller access road that curved into dense forest. That's not her route, Anton said, checking the assignment sheet. She should have stayed on Highway 470 for another 60 kilometers. Marco spoke up from his corner. That's the shortcut. The logging road. She uses it when the main road gets too crowded. Was the main road crowded yesterday? Domenico asked. Anton pulled up traffic reports.
No.
Actually, it was unusually clear. The storm hadn't hit yet and most people were staying home because of weather warnings. Domenico felt something cold settle in his stomach. So she had no reason to take the shortcut. Unless someone told her to, said a new voice. Everyone turned. Vincent stood in the doorway, holding a steaming cup of coffee and wearing that same predator smile. What are you doing here? Domenico asked. I left you in charge of the casino. Roberto's covering for me. I got curious. Vincent stepped into the room, his eyes on the monitors. You know what I think? I think Lucia got a better offer. Someone contacted her, told her to take the logging road where there are no cameras, no witnesses. She diverts, meets her buyer, and disappears with both the merchandise and whatever they paid her. My mom wouldn't do that. Marco jumped from his chair, small fists clenched.
Vincent ignored him.
Boss, look at the evidence. She deliberately left her assigned route. Her GPS conveniently fails in an area with no coverage. And now she's vanished with 50,000 in goods. If it walks like betrayal and talks like betrayal. Her last delivery was 2 days before this. Domenico interrupted, still studying the screen.
Smaller job.
She could have run then with less scrutiny. Why wait for a high-profile shipment that would guarantee we'd come looking? Vincent shrugged. Bigger payday? Or bigger trap? Domenico switched camera angles, pulling up satellite imagery of the logging road. The path wound through thick pine forest before disappearing into mountain passes. After 11:47, when Lucia's GPS died, there was nothing.
No cameras. No signals.
Just wilderness and snow. Anton, who else knew about this delivery? Just the inner circle. You, me, Vincent, Marco, the warehouse manager, and Lucia herself. And the client in Bergamo, Vincent added. They knew someone was coming. Domenico's jaw tightened. Get me the weather data for yesterday.
Exacti meline.
Anton pulled up meteorological reports. Snow started at 12:15 in the mountain region. Turned into a full blizzard by 1300 hours. Visibility near 0 inch. So between 11:47 when her GPS died and 12:15 when the snow hit, there's a 28-minute window. Domenico's mind worked like a machine, calculating angles and possibilities. Not enough time to drive very far on those mountain roads. Whatever happened to her, she's still in that region. Or she ditched the car and had someone pick her up, Vincent suggested. Boss, I know you trust her, but I trust evidence more. Domenico turned from the screens, his decision made. Get the vehicles ready. We're going to that logging road. In this weather? That's suicide. Then stay here. Vincent's smile finally cracked. Someone needs to talk sense into you. This woman has a son. Domenico finished, his voice dropping to something dangerous. A son who came to my casino in a snowstorm because he believed I would help. A son who knows his mother's patterns better than we know our own security protocols. Tell me, Vincent, if you were planning to betray me and run, would you leave your child behind? Would you promise him hot chocolate and a bedtime story, then vanish forever? Vincent opened his mouth, then closed it. Exactly, Domenico grabbed his winter coat from the chair. Loyalty isn't just about money or fear. It's about the small promises we keep when no one's watching. Lucia promised her son she'd come home. She didn't. That means something stopped her. He knelt in front of Marco, meeting the boy's frightened eyes. We're going to find your mother, but I need you to be brave.
Can you do that?
Marco nodded, his small jaw set with determination that reminded Domenico of soldiers he'd known. Too much courage for such a small frame. Good boy, Domenico stood. Anton, 3 vehicles. Armed escort. Winter survival gear and medical supplies. We leave in 15 minutes. As everyone moved to obey, Vincent lingered in the doorway. I hope you're right about her, boss, he said quietly. Because if you're wrong, this compassion will cost you everything. Domenico didn't answer. He was already thinking about the logging road, the 28-minute window, and the uncomfortable truth that Vincent refused to say aloud. If Lucia hadn't betrayed them, then someone had taken her. And if someone was bold enough to kidnap his courier, they were either very stupid or very dangerous. Either way, they'd made their last mistake. The convoy cut through the night like black knives through silk. 3 armored SUVs, their headlights barely penetrating the wall of falling snow. Domenico sat in the lead vehicle, Marco buckled in beside him, while Anton drove with the focused intensity of a man who knew his boss's life depended on his skill. Highway exit in 2 kilometers, Anton announced, checking the GPS after that. We're off the grid. Domenico studied the map on his tablet, tracing the logging road with his finger. It snaked through dense forest for 15 kilometers before splitting into 3 different paths, one leading to an abandoned lumber mill, another to a series of hunting cabins, and the third disappearing into the high mountain passes where even locals refused to venture in winter. The shortcut my mom uses, Marco said suddenly, his voice small in the darkness. It's not the whole logging road. Just the first part. She takes the middle fork after the big stone marker. Says it connects back to the highway near Bergamo, saves 40 minutes. You've been on it with her? Domenico asked. Once. Last summer. She wanted me to know it in case Marco trailed off, his small hands twisting the seatbelt. In case something happened to her. The words hung in the air like ice crystals. Anton glanced in the rearview mirror. Smart woman. Teaching her kid escape routes. She wasn't teaching him escape routes, Domenico said quietly. She was teaching him how to find her if she disappeared. The highway exit appeared through the snow, barely more than a gap between trees, no signage, no lights. Anton turned sharply, and the SUV's tires fought for grip on the unplowed access road. Behind them, the other 2 vehicles followed, their headlights creating a bubble of visibility in the endless white. The forest closed around them immediately. Tall pines heavy with snow leaned over the road like sentinels, their branches scraping against the SUV's roof. The pavement disappeared beneath half a meter of fresh powder, making it impossible to tell where the road ended and the forest began. Jesus, muttered Franco, one of Domenico's enforcers sitting in the back seat. How did she drive through this alone? She didn't, Domenico replied, watching the odometer. According to the timeline, the heavy snow started after her GPS went dark. When she drove through here, it was just beginning. Still takes guts, Franco checked his pistol for the 3rd time since they'd left the casino. These roads are notorious. People disappear up here. That's why she memorized them, Marco said. My mom says fear is just information you haven't learned yet. Domenico glanced at the boy. She's a philosopher, your mother. She's a survivor. Marco's voice carried a pride that made Domenico's chest tighten. She grew up in the mountains. Her papa was a guide. She knows snow like other people know streets, which made her disappearance even more troubling. A woman who understood winter, who'd driven these routes dozens of times, who had every reason to complete her delivery and return home to her son. She wouldn't simply vanish unless forced. Boss, Anton's voice was tense. Vehicle ahead. Domenico's hand moved to his shoulder holster as the headlights illuminated a dark shape half buried in snow. As they drew closer, the shape resolved into a car. Black sedan, windows frosted over, driver's door hanging open. That's it, Marco whispered. That's my mom's car. Stop here. Domenico was already moving, pulling on gloves and checking his weapon. Franco, Luca, with me. Anton, stay with Marco. Keep the engine running. Boss, let me come, Marco started. No, Domenico's tone left no room for argument. You stay here, where it's safe. I promise I'll find out what happened. The cold hit like a fist when he stepped outside. Wind screamed through the trees, driving snow into his face hard enough to sting. Franco and Luca flanked him as they approached the sedan, weapons drawn, every sense on high alert. The car was empty. Domenico peered through the open driver's door. The interior light was dead, battery drained. Keys still in the ignition. Lucia's purse sat on the passenger seat, undisturbed. The blue case she'd been carrying, the one with the merchandise, was gone. No blood, Franco observed, sweeping his flashlight across the interior. No signs of struggle inside the vehicle. But the door's open, Luca pointed. In this weather? She'd have closed it if she stopped voluntarily. This was force. Domenico circled the vehicle, his mind cataloging every detail. The car had slid slightly off the road. Not a violent crash, just a gentle drift that suggested it had been parked rather than wrecked. But snow had piled against the passenger side, indicating the vehicle had been sitting here for hours. Since yesterday. Boss, look at this. Franco was on his knees beside the car, brushing snow away from the ground. In the beam of his flashlight, Domenico saw them, tire tracks. Large ones, much bigger than Lucia's sedan. 2 vehicles, maybe 3, positioned behind where the car now sat. Ambush, Domenico said coldly. They waited for her here, forced her to stop. But why here specifically? Luca asked. This spot isn't random. No cameras, no witnesses, but also, he looked around, no place to hide and wait comfortably. They'd have been freezing. They knew exactly when she'd be here, Franco realized. This wasn't opportunistic. Someone told them her route and her timing. Domenico's jaw clenched. Vincent's words echoed in his mind. Someone contacted her, told her to take the logging road. But Vincent had it backward. Someone hadn't contacted Lucia with an offer. Someone had contacted her captors with information. Keep searching, Domenico ordered. Look for anything she might have left. Lucia's smart. If she had even a second, she'd leave a sign. They spread out, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The snow made everything difficult. Any evidence more than a few hours old would be completely buried. Domenico was beginning to think they'd find nothing when Luca shouted, "Boss! Here!" Domenico ran to where Luca stood at the forest's edge, about 10 meters from the car. The enforcer's flashlight illuminated a small object half buried in snow at the base of a pine tree. Domenico knelt and picked it up with gloved hands. A locket. Silver, delicate, with an intricate pattern engraved on its surface. He opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny photograph, Marco, younger, maybe 5 years old, laughing at the camera. "It's hers," Marco's voice said from behind him. Domenico turned sharply. The boy had left the SUV despite orders, standing in the snow with Anton close behind, looking apologetic. "I told him to stay," Anton started. "It's okay," Domenico held out the locket. "Marco, is this your mother's?" The boy nodded, tears freezing on his cheeks. "She never takes it off. Never. She said it's her compass. That as long as she has my picture, she knows which way is home." Domenico studied the locket's position, carefully placed at the tree's base, not dropped or lost in struggle. Intentional. Then he looked up, following the sight line from this tree back to the car, then forward along the logging road. "She left us a breadcrumb," he said slowly. "She wanted us to know she went that direction.
North.
Deeper into the mountains. Or they took her that direction," Franco corrected grimly. "Same thing," Domenico stood, pocketing the locket carefully. "Either way, we follow." "Boss," Anton said carefully, "we're already 20 kilometers from civilization. If we go deeper into the mountains in this weather." "Then we go deeper." Domenico walked back toward the convoy, his mind already calculating distances and possibilities. Lucia's alive. She has to be. You don't carefully place a locket if you're dying. You don't leave directional clues unless you believe someone will follow. He stopped at the lead SUV, looking back at his men. She's counting on us. On me. And I don't abandon my people. Even if it meant driving into a trap. Even if it meant following a trail designed to lead them into an ambush. Because that's what leaders did. They followed their people into hell, if necessary. And they brought them home. The convoy moved like ghosts through the forest.
Deeper. Darker.
The logging road narrowed until branches scraped both sides of the SUVs, creating an endless tunnel of white and black. Domenico kept his eyes locked on the path ahead, searching for any sign, another breadcrumb, tire tracks, anything that proved they were still on Lucia's trail. "This is insane," Franco muttered from the back seat. "We're going to get stuck out here." "Then we walk," Domenico replied without looking back. Marco pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging the glass. The stone marker should be coming up. That's where the road splits. Anton reduced speed to a crawl. The headlights revealed the world in fragments. A fallen tree here, a snow-buried boulder there, endless pines pressing in from all sides. Then suddenly the forest opened slightly. A massive stone stood at the intersection, ancient and weathered, covered in moss and ice. Someone had carved symbols into it decades ago, probably lumber workers marking their routes. 3 paths branched out from this point, each disappearing into darkness. "Which one?" Anton asked. Marco pointed to the middle path. "That one. My mom always takes the middle." But Domenico wasn't looking at the middle path. His eyes were fixed on something at the stone's base. "Stop the car." He was outside before Anton could fully brake, moving through knee-deep snow toward the marker. There, scraped into the fresh powder at the stone's base, were 2 words carved with something sharp.
"Help me."
"Mother of God," Franco breathed, coming up behind Domenico. The letters were crude, written quickly, possibly with a key or a piece of metal. But they were recent, no more than a few hours old. Any older, and the falling snow would have buried them completely. "She was here," Marco said, his voice breaking. "She was here today." Not just here, Domenico stood, studying the 3 paths. "She was moved through here. They're taking her somewhere specific, and they're not in a hurry." "Why not?" Luca asked. "If you kidnap someone, you get as far away as possible, as fast as possible. Unless you're not running from anyone." Domenico's mind worked through the implications. "They're confident. They think no one's following. Or they want us to follow." "A trap," Franco said flatly. "Maybe." Domenico pulled out his phone. No signal, as expected. He switched to the offline maps he'd downloaded before leaving. The middle path continued for 8 more kilometers before connecting to a secondary highway. The left path led to the abandoned lumber mill. The right path climbed higher into the mountains, ending at what the map labeled as private property, Hunting Lodge. "The middle path makes sense if they wanted a clean escape," Anton observed. "Quick route back to civilization." "But she wrote 'help me' here," Marco said. "At the marker. She knew someone would see it here because this is where we'd have to choose which way to go." Domenico knelt beside the boy. "Marco, when your mother showed you this route, did she say anything about these other paths? The mill or the hunting lodge?" Marco thought hard, his small face scrunched in concentration. "She said the mill was dangerous. Old floors that could collapse. But the lodge," he paused. "She said bad people used to use it. Before you took over the territory, Mr. Valeri. She said the old boss kept it for hurting people." A cold weight settled in Domenico's stomach. He remembered that lodge. When he'd taken control of this territory 5 years ago, cleaning out the previous regime, that building had been a house of horrors. Torture chamber. Execution site. He'd ordered it closed, abandoned, left to rot as a monument to the brutality he'd vowed to end. But abandoned didn't mean forgotten. "The right path," Domenico said, standing. "They took her to the lodge." "How can you be sure?" Franco asked. "Because taking her to the mill makes no strategic sense. It's a dead end with structural damage. And the middle path leads back to civilization where witnesses might see them. Domenico moved back toward the SUV. But the lodge is isolated, familiar to anyone who worked for the old regime, and he paused, the realization hitting him like ice water. And it would send a message. What message? Anton asked. That someone wants to bring back the old ways. Domenico's voice was flat, controlled, but rage simmered beneath. Someone who knows the building's history, who knows what it represents. They loaded back into the vehicles. Domenico gave the order, and the convoy turned onto the right path, the one climbing into the mountains toward the hunting lodge. The road grew worse immediately. Steeper, narrower. The SUV's four-wheel drive struggled for purchase on the incline. On their left, the mountain rose straight up. On their right, nothing but darkness and a drop into the forest below. This is suicide, Franco said again, gripping the door handle as the SUV tilted at a dangerous angle. My mom drove this alone? Marco whispered, awed and terrified. She didn't drive it, Domenico replied, watching the road. She was brought here, against her will, in someone else's vehicle. They climbed for 30 minutes. The temperature dropped with each meter of elevation. Ice formed on the windshield faster than the defroster could clear it. The wind howled like something alive, rocking the heavy SUVs. Then Anton slammed the brakes.
Jesus Christ.
Ahead, the road was blocked. Not by snow or a fallen tree, but by a vehicle. A black van, doors open, completely abandoned. And beyond it, barely visible through the storm, the dark silhouette of a building. The hunting lodge. Domenico stepped out into the screaming wind, his weapon drawn. Franco and Luca flanked him immediately, their own guns ready. The abandoned van showed no signs of life. Engine cold, interior empty except for rope and zip ties scattered across the floor.
Tools of kidnapping.
They're already inside, Franco said. Domenico studied the lodge. It was larger than he remembered. 3 stories of dark wood and stone, windows boarded up, the whole structure barely visible against the white sky.
No lights.
No movement. But smoke rose from one of the chimneys, thin and gray, almost invisible in the storm. Someone was inside. Someone was keeping warm. Anton, take Marco back down the mountain, Domenico ordered. Get to where there's cell signal and call for backup. Boss, I'm not leaving you. That's an order, Domenico's voice cut like steel. If this goes wrong, someone needs to get out and tell what happened. Marco's mother is in there. If we fail, he deserves to know the truth. Anton's jaw worked, but he nodded. How long do we wait before assuming the worst? 2 hours. If we're not out or you don't hear from us in 2 hours, you run and you don't look back. Domenico knelt in front of Marco one last time. The boy's eyes were huge, terrified but trying so hard to be brave. I'm going to get your mother, Domenico promised. Stay with Anton.
Do exactly what he says.
Understand? Will you really bring her back? Marco's voice was so small. Domenico thought about lying. Thought about making promises he might not be able to keep. But something in the boy's eyes demanded honesty. I'll bring her back, he said, or I'll die trying. Either way, you'll know the truth. Marco suddenly lunged forward, wrapping his small arms around Domenico's neck in a fierce hug. Thank you for believing me, he whispered. Nobody else would have come. Domenico's throat tightened. He gently disentangled himself and stood. Franco.
Luca.
With me. They approached the lodge like soldiers entering enemy territory. Weapons ready, senses hyper-alert, expecting ambush at every step. The snow muffled their footsteps. The wind covered any noise they made. The front door hung slightly ajar. An invitation. Or a trap. Domenico pushed it open with his boot, gun raised. Inside was darkness and the smell of old wood, and something else, something metallic and wrong.
Blood.
Someone had been bleeding in this place. Recently. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, Lucia Marchetti was either still alive and waiting for rescue, or already dead, and they were walking into their own graves. Domenico stepped inside anyway, because that's what you did for your people. You walked into darkness. And you brought them home. The lodge swallowed them in silence. Domenico's eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness. The interior was exactly as he remembered. Exposed wooden beams overhead, a grand stone fireplace dominating the main room, hunting trophies mounted on walls that had witnessed unspeakable things. Dust covered everything except the floor, where fresh boot prints tracked through decades of decay. Multiple sets. At least 4 different people, maybe more. Franco moved left, Luca right, both covering angles while Domenico advanced toward the fireplace. The smell of blood grew stronger, not overwhelming, but present. Someone had been injured here, though not fatally. Not enough blood for that. The fire in the hearth had burned down to embers, but heat still radiated from the stones. Recently tended. Within the last hour. Boss, Luca whispered from across the room. You need to see this. Domenico crossed to where Luca stood beside an overturned chair. Rope lay coiled on the floor, the ends frayed and wet, not cut with a blade, but torn apart through force or friction. Blood spotted the wood beneath the chair. And on the wall behind it, scratched into the old timber with something sharp, were 4 words.
Rossi.
3 men.
North.
Rossi. Franco said the name like a curse. The Rossi family was destroyed 6 years ago. We wiped them out when we took this territory. Apparently not completely, Domenico photographed the message with his phone. Lucia left us intel. She was here, tied to this chair, and she managed to break free. Or someone let her go, Luca suggested darkly. No, Domenico pointed at the rope. Look at how it's torn. That's hours of work, rubbing against wood until it frayed enough to snap. She freed herself. Franco knelt, examining the blood. Not much here. Superficial wounds. Wrists, maybe. From the restraints. 3 men. Domenico read the message again. North. She's telling us which direction they went and how many we're facing. Or how many she saw. Luca moved to the window, peering through gaps in the boards. Could be more waiting outside. Domenico's mind raced through what he knew about the Rossi family. Old regime. Brutal. Specialized in extortion and kidnapping, but they'd made the mistake of challenging Domenico's expansion 6 years ago. The war had been brief and bloody. Domenico had personally ensured every lieutenant, every soldier, every associate was either dead, imprisoned, or exiled. But families had roots. Deep ones. Search the building, he ordered. Every room. Look for more messages, more signs of where they went. They split up, moving through the lodge with weapons drawn. Domenico took the 2nd floor, climbing stairs that groaned under his weight. The hallway stretched into darkness, doors hanging open like missing teeth. The first room was empty except for a stained mattress and chains bolted to the wall. The second room held filing cabinets, their drawers pulled out and ransacked. Someone had been looking for something, probably old records or money the previous regime had hidden. In the third room, Domenico found it. A map pinned to the wall, marked with red circles and notes in Italian. His Italian was functional, and what he read made his blood run cold. Valeri routes, northern corridor. Casino, primary target. Warehouses, secondary. Couriers, weakness. Someone had been planning this. Not a random kidnapping, but a calculated strike at his operation. And they'd identified Lucia as a weak point, not because she was disloyal, but because she was isolated during deliveries. Vulnerable. Domenico pulled out his phone and took pictures of everything. Then he noticed something else, a piece of paper on the floor, partially crumpled. He smoothed it out. A receipt. Gas station, dated 3 days ago. Northern Highway, 40 kilometers from here. And scrawled on the back in handwriting he recognized as Lucia's. Vinos. Watch him.
Ve Vincent.
Domenico stood very still, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. Vincent, who had been so insistent that Lucia had betrayed them. Vincent, who had pushed so hard for Domenico to abandon the search. Vincent, who knew every detail of every courier route because he managed logistics. Boss. Franco's shout came from outside the lodge. You need to see this now. Domenico pocketed the receipt and ran, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He burst out the front door to find Franco and Luca standing near the tree line, their flashlights illuminating something in the snow. Tire tracks. Fresh ones, cutting away from the lodge and heading north into the forest. But that wasn't what made Domenico's heart stop. It was what lay beside the tracks. 2 bodies. Domenico approached slowly, weapon ready, but the men were clearly dead. Both wore black tactical gear. Both had been beaten severely, faces swollen, noses broken, defensive wounds on their hands. Neither had been shot. This was close-quarters combat, brutal and personal. "She did this?" Franco asked, incredulous. Domenico knelt beside the nearest body, examining the injuries. "Not alone. But she participated," he pointed at drag marks in the snow. "They chased her into the forest. She fought back. Hard." Luca searched the bodies, pulling out wallets. No identification, but each man carried the same thing, a silver coin with a rose embossed on one side. The Rossi family crest. "They're really back," Luca breathed. "After all these years." Someone brought them back. Domenico stood, his mind assembling the pieces. Someone who knew our operation intimately. Someone who could identify the perfect target, a loyal courier on a vulnerable route. Someone who could reactivate old enemies and point them at us. "Vincent," Franco said, understanding dawning. "That son of a bitch set this up." "We don't know that yet," Domenico cautioned, though the receipt in his pocket burned like accusation. But Lucia suspected him. That's why she left the message. A sound cut through the wind, distant but distinct. An engine. Multiple engines, moving through the forest to the north. "They're on the move," Luca said, checking his weapon. "And we're at least 30 minutes behind them." Domenico looked at the tire tracks disappearing into the darkness, then back at the lodge where Lucia had left her messages scratched in wood and blood. She'd been here. She'd fought her way free from trained soldiers. She'd killed or helped kill 2 men with her bare hands. And now she was running through winter mountains with killers on her trail. "Back to the vehicles," Domenico ordered. "We follow those tracks. Anton and Marco stay where they are. I don't want them anywhere near this." "Boss," Franco said carefully, "if Vincent really is behind this, he knows we're out here. He could be sending more men to cut us off. Then they'll die too." Domenico's voice was ice and iron. "Nobody touches my people. Not the Rossi family. Not traitors in my own organization. Nobody." They moved quickly back to the SUVs, the storm intensifying around them. As Domenico slid behind the wheel, Anton had taken Marco further down the mountain in the other vehicle. He pulled out his phone one more time. Still no signal. But that would change once they descended. And when it did, Vincent would have some very difficult questions to answer. For now, though, there was only the hunt. Lucia was alive. Fighting. Running. And somewhere in these mountains, the Rossi family thought they'd won. They were about to learn what happened when you took something from Domenico Valeri. They were about to learn that some debts could only be paid in blood. The SUV's engine roared to life. The hunt continued. And in the darkness ahead, Lucia Marchetti ran for her life, leaving breadcrumbs for the one man she believed would follow her into hell. She wasn't wrong. The tire tracks led them deeper into madness. Domenico drove with controlled aggression, the SUV fishtailing through snow that had grown deeper with each passing kilometer. Behind him, Franco and Luca maintained radio silence, their weapons ready, eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of ambush. The tracks were erratic, swerving, correcting, the pattern of drivers pushing too hard through dangerous terrain. Desperate or reckless. Maybe both. "They're running scared," Franco observed. "These aren't the tracks of people in control." "Good," Domenico replied. "Scared people make mistakes." The forest began to thin, giving way to a clearing. Through the driving snow, a structure materialized, a small hunting cabin, lights burning in the windows. The tire tracks led straight to it, then continued past, heading further north. But something was wrong. The cabin's front door stood wide open, swinging slightly in the wind. The vehicles that had made the tracks were gone, but fresh footprints led from the cabin into the forest in multiple directions. "Stop here," Domenico ordered, killing the engine 50 meters from the structure. "This feels wrong." "Could be another message from Lucia," Luca suggested. "Or a trap." Franco checked his magazine. Perfect kill box. One entrance, limited visibility, and we're silhouetted against our own headlights. Domenico studied the cabin through the windshield. The lights inside flickered, not electric, but firelight. Someone had built a fire and left it burning. Why abandon a warm shelter in this weather? Unless they hadn't left voluntarily. "We go in quiet," Domenico decided. "Weapons ready." "Franco, you clear left." "Luca, right." "I take center." "Anything moves, you put it down." They exited the vehicle in synchronized silence, boots crunching through snow that was now waist-deep in drifts. The wind screamed around them, providing cover for their approach. Domenico reached the door first, his pistol raised, and peered inside. The cabin was chaos. Furniture overturned. Glass shattered. Blood on the walls, not spray patterns from gunshots, but smears and handprints. Evidence of hand-to-hand combat. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across the wreckage. And in the center of the room, two men sat bound to chairs with their own belts. Both were unconscious. Both had been beaten methodically, faces swollen, eyes blackened, noses clearly broken. Their tactical gear was torn, weapons missing. Someone had interrogated them violently, then left them alive. "Clear left," Franco called out, emerging from a side room. "Clear right," Luca echoed. Domenico approached the bound men cautiously. He recognized the type: mercenaries, probably ex-military, hired muscle for the Rossi family. One was older, maybe 40, with scars suggesting a long career of violence. The younger one couldn't be more than 25. Both wore the same silver rose coins on chains around their necks. Domenico grabbed a bucket of snow from outside and dumped it on the older man's face. He sputtered awake, eyes wild with panic and pain. "Who are you?"
Domenico demanded.
The man spat blood. "Go to hell." Domenico pressed his gun barrel against the man's kneecap. "I'll ask once more.
Who are
you?" "Carlo Rossi," the man gasped. "I work for the Rossi family."
I know.
"What I want to know is why you took my courier." Carlo's swollen eyes widened with recognition. "Valeri. Jesus Christ, you're Valeri. And you made a very serious mistake." Domenico kept the gun steady. "Where is Lucia Marchetti?"
Gone.
"She's gone." "She." Carlo broke off, laughing through broken teeth. "She's a goddamn demon, that woman. We had her tied, drugged, completely secure. But she." The younger mercenary stirred, groaning. Carlo glanced at him, then back at Domenico. "She waited until we stopped here to warm up. Pretended to be unconscious. Then when Marco turned his back, Carlo jerked his head toward the younger man. She got his knife. Freed herself. Killed Enzo with his own gun. Beat the three of us unconscious before we could react." "3." Domenico looked around. "I count 2. Antonio ran. The coward bolted into the forest when she started fighting. She let him go, took his vehicle, and drove north." Carlo coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. "She told us something before she left. Made sure we'd remember." "What?" She said, "Tell Domenico Valeri that wolves circle his king. Tell him Vincent Corso sold his soul to ghosts." Carlo's eyes locked onto Domenico's. "You've got a traitor in your house, Valeri. A big 1-inch. Before Domenico could respond, the cabin windows exploded. Glass shattered inward in a storm of fragments. Domenico dove behind an overturned table as bullets ripped through the air where he'd been standing. Franco and Luca hit the ground, returning fire blindly toward the windows. "Sniper!" Franco shouted. Multiple positions. More gunfire erupted from the forest, not random spray, but controlled bursts from at least 3 different locations. Professional. Coordinated. They'd been waiting for someone to investigate the cabin. Domenico's mind raced even as he combat rolled toward better cover. This was too organized for desperate survivors. Someone had set this ambush knowing he would come. Vincent. The name burned through his thoughts like acid. Vincent, who knew Domenico would follow Lucia's trail. Vincent, who could coordinate with the Rossi family's remnants. Vincent, who was probably sitting in the casino right now, waiting for news that his boss had died in the mountains. We need to move. Luca fired 3 shots through the shattered window, then ducked as return fire splintered the wall above his head. They've got us pinned. Domenico assessed their options. The front door was exposed, a death trap. The windows were all compromised. But there had to be a back exit. Every hunting cabin had one. Franco. Kitchen. Franco understood immediately, crawling toward the small kitchen area while Domenico and Luca provided covering fire. He disappeared through a doorway, and seconds later, Domenico heard wood splintering. Got it. Back door. Go. Domenico grabbed Carlo's chair and dragged it toward the kitchen, using the mercenary as a human shield. Carlo screamed protests, but Domenico ignored him. Information was valuable, and Carlo had more to tell. The younger mercenary wasn't so lucky. As Luca made his break for the kitchen, a bullet caught Marco in the throat. He died gurgling, still tied to his chair. They burst through the back door into deeper snow, bullets chasing them. Domenico shoved Carlo forward, keeping the man between himself and the snipers. Franco and Luca laid down, suppressing fire, their muzzle flashes bright in the darkness. The SUV. Franco pointed, but Domenico could already hear engines roaring to life from multiple directions. The attackers had vehicles positioned to cut off escape routes. This wasn't just an ambush, it was an execution box. Into the forest. Domenico made the call instantly. Vehicles are death traps. We go on foot. They plunged into the tree line, dragging Carlo with them. The forest was a maze of shadows and snow, branches tearing at their clothes. Behind them, voices shouted in Italian, commands, coordinates, the language of hunters closing in on prey. Domenico's phone buzzed in his pocket. Signal. Weak, but present. He pulled it out while running, thumbs flying across the screen in a message to Anton. Ambush. Vincent is traitor. Get Marco to safety. Trust no one from casino. The message sent just as his phone died, battery killed by the cold. But it was enough. If they died here, at least Anton would know the truth. Marco would know his mother had died a warrior, not a traitor. And Vincent Corso would face justice, one way or another. Boss. Luca grabbed Domenico's arm, pointing ahead through the trees. Tracks in the snow. Fresh tire tracks, leading north. Single vehicle. Lucia's stolen car. She came this way. Domenico breathed. She's ahead of us. So are our killers, Franco reminded him grimly. Carlo laughed through his pain. A wet, broken sound. You're all dead. Vincent's already won. By morning, he'll own your empire and the Rossi family will be back in business. Domenico stopped running. He turned slowly, looking at Carlo with eyes that held no mercy, no hesitation. Then I have nothing left to lose, he said quietly. And sometimes, a man with nothing to lose was the most dangerous thing in the world. They ran through the forest like ghosts fleeing dawn. Domenico's lungs burned with cold air, his legs screaming from pushing through snow that seemed determined to drag them down. Behind them, voices had faded, but that didn't mean safety. It meant the hunters had changed tactics. Carlo stumbled, falling face first into a drift. Domenico hauled him up by his collar, ignoring the man's groans of pain. How much further to your safe house?
Domenico demanded.
What's safe house?
Carlo gasped.
Domenico pressed the gun to Carlo's temple. The one you were running to. The one north of the cabin. I know how the Rossi family operated. You always had backup locations. Where is it? Carlo's resistance crumbled. 3 kilometers. Old Ranger Station. We stocked it with supplies, weapons. But what? But Antonio's heading there too. And he's got a 30-minute lead. Franco cursed. If he reaches it first, he'll fortify and wait for reinforcements. Or he'll burn it, Luca added darkly. Deny us shelter and supplies. Domenico made a decision. We move faster. Carlo, you're going to run, and if you slow us down, I'll put a bullet in your spine and leave you for the wolves. Clear?
Carlo nodded frantically.
They pushed harder, the forest a blur of white and black. Domenico's mind worked through contingencies even as his body operated on pure survival instinct. Vincent's betrayal explained everything: the precise timing of Lucia's ambush, the re-emergence of the Rossi family, the coordinated attacks. His lieutenant had been planning this for months, maybe years. But Vincent had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated Lucia Marchetti. And now he'd underestimated Domenico. The ranger station appeared through the trees like a mirage, a two-story wooden structure with boarded windows and a satellite dish on the roof. Smoke rose from the chimney. Lights glowed behind the boards. Someone's here, Franco whispered. They approached cautiously, weapons drawn. Domenico noticed immediately that something was wrong. The front door hung open, swinging in the wind. Fresh blood marked the snow leading up the steps. Could be Lucia, Luca suggested. Or a trap, Franco countered. Domenico gestured for silence and crept up the steps. The wood creaked under his weight, impossibly loud in the stillness. He peered through the door. The interior was warm, a fire roaring in the stone hearth. Canned food sat open on a table, recently eaten. A medical kit lay scattered across the floor, bandages and antiseptic bottles everywhere. And on the wall, written in what looked like charcoal from the fire, was a message. Dom, they're coming. Headed to Old Mill. She was here, Domenico breathed. She knew we'd follow. Boss, Franco's voice was urgent. Look at the fire. Domenico turned his attention to the hearth. The fire was too big, burning too hot. Someone had dumped accelerant on it. The flames licked higher than they should, and the heat was intense even from across the room. Then he smelled it.
Gasoline.
Out.
Domenico shouted.
Everybody out now. They scrambled backward just as the fire reached its source. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was enough. Flames erupted from the hearth, racing along gasoline trails that had been poured throughout the first floor. The building became an inferno in seconds. Domenico rolled down the steps, dragging Carlo with him. Franco and Luca tumbled into the snow, coughing from smoke inhalation. Behind them, the ranger station transformed into a pillar of fire that lit up the night sky.
Antonio, Carlo gasped.
He got here first. He torched it. But Lucia was here after him, Domenico said, staring at the flames. She left us the message, which means she was here within the last hour. She knew it was rigged to burn, Luca realized. She went in anyway, left us intel, and got out before it blew. Franco pointed at the building. Boss, look. Second floor. Through the flames consuming the first story, something was visible on the second floor, a symbol scorched into the wooden wall, visible through a broken window. Not painted, burned, deliberately carved with fire. She refused. 3 words. A message from Lucia's captors to anyone who came looking. She'd been given a choice, betray Domenico or die. And she'd refused. They tortured her for information, Domenico said quietly, rage building in his chest like a storm. And she gave them nothing. A loyal woman, Carlo muttered. Stupid, but loyal. Domenico didn't hit him. Instead, he pulled out the receipt he'd found at the hunting lodge, the one with Lucia's warning about Vincent. How long has Vincent been working with the Rossi family? He asked Carlo. 6 months. Maybe more, Carlo coughed, blood on his lips. He approached us, said he wanted to stage a coup. Offered us money, territory, access to your supply routes. All we had to do was help him eliminate you. By kidnapping Lucia? By proving your weakness, Carlo's words came faster now, a man unburdening himself. Vincent said you'd gotten soft. That you cared too much about your people. He said if we took one courier, you'd either abandon her, proving you were pragmatic enough to keep following, or you'd chase her into the mountains like a fool. Either way, Vincent wins.
How?
Franco demanded. If you abandon her, your reputation as a leader who protects his people dies. Your soldiers lose faith. Vincent steps in as the strong man Carlo grimaced. But if you chased her, which you did, we kill you out here where nobody's watching.
Un teen accident.
Tragic. Vincent becomes boss by default, and the Rossi family gets our territory back. Domenico absorbed this, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Except Lucia didn't break. She escaped, killed your men, and left a trail. She ruined everything, Carlo admitted. We were supposed to extract information, then dump her body where you'd find it. Proof that loyalty gets you killed in this business. Instead, he shook his head in wonder. She fought like 10 men. I've never seen anything like it. Luca was scanning the forest with his weapon. Boss, that fire is a beacon. Everyone within 10 kilometers knows we're here. Good. Domenico stood, his decision made. Lucia said she's heading to the old mill. That's where we go. That place is a death trap, Carlo protested. Unstable floors, partial collapse. Vincent's probably got 20 men waiting there. Then 20 men are going to die tonight. Domenico's voice was ice. Franco, Luca, how much ammunition do you have?
They checked.
4 magazines each, Franco reported. Plus what's in the chamber. Not enough for 20 men, Luca said grimly. Then we'll have to be creative. Domenico looked at Carlo. You're going to help us. Why would I help you? Because Vincent betrayed you too. Domenico, let that sink in. You think he's going to let the Rossi family share power? He's using you to eliminate me, and once I'm dead, he'll eliminate you. Tie up loose ends. That's what smart men do. Carlo's face paled as understanding dawned. That's why Antonio ran. He figured it out. Probably. Domenico hauled Carlo to his feet. So you have a choice. Help us reach Lucia and survive this night, or die here in the snow when Vincent's backup team arrives to make sure there are no witnesses. The ranger station collapsed behind them in a shower of sparks and flames. The symbol, she refused, disappeared into the inferno, but its message was seared into Domenico's mind. Lucia had been given the same choice Carlo now faced. Betray or die. She'd chosen death before dishonor. It had cost her everything, her freedom, her safety, her son's peace of mind. But it had also revealed the truth. Vincent Corso was a traitor, and the old evil of the Rossi family had never truly died. Now, in the frozen mountains with enemies closing in from all sides, Domenico Valeri had to make his own choice. Run and regroup, or push forward into the trap and finish this. He looked at Franco and Luca, loyal men who'd followed him into hell without question. Then he looked north, toward the old mill where Lucia waited. We go forward, he said. Into the trap? Franco asked. Through it, Domenico started walking, his weapon ready, his resolve absolute. Because that's what leaders do. We don't abandon our people. Ever. Even if it meant walking into an ambush with insufficient ammunition and a traitor waiting to spring the final trap. Even if it meant death. Some things were worth dying for. Loyalty was one of them. They moved through the darkness like wolves stalking prey. The old mill was still 3 kilometers away, but Domenico could feel time running out. Behind them, the ranger station's fire had finally collapsed into embers, and silence had returned to the forest, the kind of silence that preceded violence. Carlo stumbled again, and this time Domenico let him fall. The mercenary was slowing them down, and the cold was doing what bullets hadn't, killing him slowly through internal injuries and exposure. Leave me, Carlo gasped. I'm dead anyway. Not yet. Domenico pulled him up one more time. You're going to tell me everything about Vincent's plan. Every detail. And then maybe I'll let you live. There's nothing more to. Franco's phone erupted with sound, the ring impossibly loud in the frozen stillness. Everyone froze. Franco pulled it out, staring at the screen. Anton, he said, his voice tight. How does he have signal out here? Answer it, Domenico ordered. Speaker. Franco pressed the button. Anton? Where are you? The voice that came through wasn't Anton's. Hello, Domenico. Vincent's smooth tone filled the forest like poison. I'm guessing you can hear me. Domenico moved closer to the phone, his jaw clenched. Where's Anton? Where's Marco? Safe. For now, Vincent's smile was audible. They're currently sitting in one of your own SUVs about 2 kilometers from where you're standing. I have 6 men with them. The boy is unharmed. Anton has been cooperative. You son of a... Let me stop you there, Vincent interrupted. You're in no position to threaten me. I have the child. I have your man. And I have 20 soldiers between you and any possible escape route. So here's what's going to happen. Domenico said nothing, letting Vincent talk. Villains always talked too much. You're going to walk to the old mill. Alone. Unarmed. You're going to surrender yourself, and in exchange, I'll let the boy and Anton go. They'll drive back to the city, and you'll die quickly.
Clean.
Professional, Vincent paused. Or you can refuse, and I'll send Marco's fingers to you one at a time until you change your mind. Franco and Luca looked at Domenico, weapons ready, waiting for orders. And Lucia? Domenico asked quietly. What happens to her? Vincent laughed. You're still worried about the courier?
Even now?
Domenico, this is why you're failing. You care too much. But to answer your question, she's already at the mill. Injured, exhausted, cornered. My men are hunting her through the building as we speak. Whether she lives or dies depends entirely on how quickly you cooperate. Let me talk to Marco.
No.
Then I don't believe you have him. A pause. Then fine. But only for a moment. Shuffling sounds. A child's frightened breathing. Mr. Valeri? Marco's voice was small, terrified. Marco, are you hurt?
No.
But they have Anton. They hit him when he tried to fight, the boy's voice cracked.
I'm sorry.
I should have stayed at the casino like you said. This isn't your fault, Domenico's voice softened despite everything. Listen to me carefully. Do you remember what your mother taught you? About being brave. She said brave isn't not being scared. Brave is being scared and doing the right thing anyway. That's right.
So, I need you to be brave now. Can you do that?
I'll try. Good boy. Domenico looked at Franco and Luca, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. Marco, one more thing. You said your mother whispered that wolves circle the king. Do you remember anything else she said that night? Before she left. There was a long pause. Vincent's voice cut in. Enough. You've heard the boy. Now. Wait, Marco's voice grew stronger. She said something else. About the mill. Vincent tried to cut him off, but Marco spoke faster. She said if anything ever happened to her, if she couldn't come home, I should remember that the mill has 3 levels. 3 levels, but 4 ways out. And the basement connects to the river caves. That's enough. Vincent snarled. The phone went dead. Domenico stood very still, processing what Marco had just revealed. The boy was smart, just like his mother. That information hadn't been random childhood memory. It was intelligence. An escape route. The basement connects to caves, Luca repeated. That means Lucia might not be trapped after all. It also means we have a way in that Vincent doesn't know about, Franco added. Carlo, still slumped in the snow, let out a weak laugh. The boy just betrayed Vincent. Smart kid. But it won't matter. Those caves flood in winter. They'll be full of ice and water. Impassable. Maybe Domenico pulled Carlo up again, his grip iron. But Lucia grew up in these mountains. Her father was a guide. If anyone knows how to navigate flooded caves, it's her. They started moving again. Faster now despite the exhaustion. The mill was close, Domenico could feel it. But more importantly, he understood now why Lucia had gone there specifically. Not because she was trapped. Because she knew the terrain better than anyone. She'd led Vincent's men into a location where her experience was an advantage. Where someone who understood snow and mountains and survival could outmaneuver soldiers with superior firepower. She's not cornered, Domenico said, realization dawning. She's hunting them. 1 woman against 20 men? Franco sounded skeptical. 1 woman who knows every inch of that building. who grew up learning how to survive in conditions that kill trained soldiers. Domenico pushed through a drift, his determination renewed. Vincent made the same mistake everyone makes. He assumed weapons and numbers equal victory. They usually do, Luca pointed out. Not always. Domenico thought about Marco standing in the snow outside his casino, terrified but determined. Thought about Lucia scratching messages into wood while bleeding from her wrists. Thought about a mother who'd been tortured and refused to break. Sometimes one person with everything to lose is worth more than an army with nothing to fight for. They crested a hill, and the mill appeared below them. A massive structure of rotting wood and rusted metal, 3 stories tall, its water wheel frozen solid in the creek that ran beneath it. Lights moved inside, flashlights searching. Vincent's men hunting. But Domenico saw something else. Fresh footprints in the snow, leading not toward the mill, but around it.
Toward the creek. Toward the caves beneath.
Lucia had already left the building. She was below ground, using the very escape route her son had just revealed to Domenico. Which meant Vincent's men were searching an empty building while their target circled behind them. She's magnificent, Domenico breathed. She's also still outnumbered, Franco reminded him. And we still need to get Marco and Anton. Then we split up. Domenico turned to his men. Franco, you take Carlo. Circle east. Cause a distraction. Make them think we're coming from that direction. Luca, you go west. Find Anton and Marco. Get them to safety. I don't care how. What about you, boss? Domenico looked at the creek, at the dark opening where water disappeared beneath the mill. I'm going after Lucia. We're going to come up through those caves into the mill's basement, and we're going to end this. That's suicide, Carlo muttered. Probably. Domenico checked his weapon. 1 magazine left. Maybe 15 rounds. Against 20 men. The math was impossible. But math didn't account for rage. Or loyalty. Or a mafia boss who'd finally remembered what he'd become a leader to prevent. Good people dying because evil men faced no consequences. Move out, he ordered. And if I don't make it, make sure Marco knows his mother died a hero. Franco gripped his shoulder. You'll tell him yourself, boss. They separated into the darkness, each man carrying impossible odds and the weight of loyalty that couldn't be bought or broken. And somewhere beneath the frozen mill, Lucia Marchetti waited in the darkness, wounded but unbroken, a mother who'd chosen death before betraying the man who'd just walked into hell to save her. Some stories ended in tragedy, but this one, Domenico swore, would end in reckoning. Vincent Corso had made his final mistake. He'd forgotten that the strongest bonds aren't forged in boardrooms or with contracts. They're forged in snow and blood and impossible choices. And they don't break. Ever. The cave entrance was a black mouth in the frozen earth. Domenico stood at its edge, water trickling past his boots, the sound of the creek magnified into an echoing roar by the cavern walls. Ice coated everything, stalactites hanging like teeth, the walls gleaming like glass in his flashlight beam. This was madness. But then again, so was everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. He stepped inside. The cold hit him immediately, worse than the forest, because here the wind couldn't reach. This was ancient cold, the kind that had been building for thousands of years beneath the earth. His breath came out in clouds so thick he could barely see past them. The cave descended sharply, the ceiling dropping until Domenico had to crouch, then crawl. Water ran beneath him, icy and swift, soaking through his clothes. His flashlight beam caught something on the wall, a handprint in blood. Fresh blood. Lucia had come this way. If you can hear me, Domenico called into the darkness, his voice bouncing off stone. It's Domenico Valeri. I'm here to help. Only echoes answered. He pushed deeper, following the blood trail. The cave twisted like intestines, branching into side passages that disappeared into absolute darkness. But the main passage was clear, worn smooth by centuries of water flow, leading upward now toward the mill's foundation. Then he heard it, breathing, ragged and pained. Domenico killed his flashlight and moved by feel alone, one hand on the slick cave wall, his weapon drawn. The breathing grew louder, closer. He could smell blood now, fresh and metallic. "Lucia," he whispered. A click. The sound of a gun being cocked. "Stop moving," a woman's voice, hoarse and exhausted but still commanding. "I will shoot you. My name is Domenico Valeri. I'm your employer. Your son Marco sent me." Silence. Then, "What's Marco's favorite breakfast?" A test. "Smart woman. Chocolate pancakes with strawberries. He told me in my office while I was searching for you." Domenico kept his hands visible, though he doubted she could see them in the darkness. "He came to my casino in a snowstorm because you didn't come home. He believed I would help." More silence. Then the sound of metal sliding against stone as a gun was lowered. "Turn your flashlight on." Slowly.
Domenico obeyed.
The beam revealed Lucia Marchetti pressed against the cave wall 10 meters ahead, a pistol gripped in both hands. She looked like she'd fought through hell, face bruised and swollen, lips split, dark hair matted with blood and dirt. Her clothes were torn, revealing bandages wrapped around her ribs and left arm. She'd made them from strips of her own shirt. But her eyes were clear, alert, unbroken. "You came," she breathed, lowering the weapon. "You actually came?" "Of course I came." Domenico approached carefully, holstering his own gun. "You're one of mine. I don't abandon my people." Lucia's composure cracked. Her legs gave out, and Domenico caught her before she hit the stone floor. She was burning with fever, her skin hot despite the cold. "Easy," he said, helping her sit. "How bad are you hurt?" "Cracked ribs. Knife wound in my side, shallow. Sprained ankle." She rattled off injuries like a shopping list. "I've had worse." "When?" A ghost of a smile. "Growing up in these mountains. My brothers and I used to cave dive for fun. Papa said if we could survive winter in the caves, we could survive anything." Domenico examined her makeshift bandages. The knife wound was infected, red lines spreading from the edges. Without proper treatment, sepsis would kill her in days. "Vincent set this up," he said. "He's been working with the Rossi family. He gave them your route, your timing, everything." "I know," Lucia's voice was bitter. "I figured it out when they knew exactly where to ambush me. Only 5 people knew my route that day. You, Anton, Marco the warehouse manager, Vincent, and me. I knew it wasn't you. You've never betrayed anyone. Anton's too loyal. Marco's too dumb. That left Vincent. You left me warnings. The locket. The messages. I wasn't sure you'd find them. Or follow them." She looked at him with something like wonder. "Most bosses would have written me off. Cut losses. But you brought my son into your casino. Gave him your coat. Followed a child's directions into a blizzard. He believed in you." Domenico pulled out his phone. Still no signal. "We need to get you out of here. Can you walk?" "I can crawl if I have to." Lucia struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on Domenico. "But we can't go back the way you came. Vincent has men watching the creek entrance. I saw them from inside the caves." "The basement entrance Marco mentioned?"
"Yes.
"It opens into the mill's lowest level." But she hesitated. "Vincent's men are searching the building. 20 of them, at least. We'd be going from the cave into a shooting gallery." Domenico smiled, cold and predatory. "Unless we collapse the cave behind us and force them to come at us through a single choke point. Turn their numbers into a disadvantage." Lucia stared at him. "That's insane. So, is everything else about tonight?" He looked around the cave, assessing the structure. The ceiling was unstable here, cracks visible in the rock, loose stones scattered on the floor. "This section looks ready to come down anyway. If we collapse it wrong, we die down here, buried alive. Or we die up there, shot by Vincent's men." Domenico met her eyes. "Your choice. But I didn't come this far to give up now." Lucia was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her torn jacket and pulled out the blue case, the one she'd been carrying when she was ambushed. Battered and scratched, but intact. "I never opened it," she said. "They tortured me for 3 days trying to get me to open it. Wanted to know what was inside. Thought it was money or drugs. I told them it was sealed, that only you had the code." They broke my ribs trying to make me talk. Domenico took the case, feeling its weight. Inside wasn't money or drugs. It was documents, contracts for his legitimate business expansion. The future he'd been building. The future Vincent wanted to destroy. You protected this? He asked quietly. Took torture for paperwork. I protected what it represented. Lucia's voice was fierce despite her exhaustion. You're trying to go legitimate. Clean money, clean future. I have a son, Mr. Valeri. I want him to grow up in a world where his mother isn't a criminal, where he doesn't have to lie about what I do. This case, she touched it gently. This is that world. I die before I let someone destroy it. Something shifted in Domenico's chest. This woman had suffered and bled and fought, not for money or fear or even survival, but for an idea. For the hope that tomorrow could be better than today. She believed in him more than he'd believed in himself. We're getting out of here, he said, his voice steel-wrapped in certainty. Both of us. And when we do, Vincent dies. The Rossi family ends. And you and Marco get your clean future. I promise you that. How can you promise that? We're trapped in a cave with no backup, outnumbered 20 to 2-inch. Domenico set down the blue case and began examining the cave ceiling, looking for the right spot, the keystone that, if removed, would bring everything down in a controlled collapse. Because I'm Domenico Valeri, he said simply. And I don't break my promises. He found it, a support column of limestone that the water had been eroding for centuries. One good explosion would bring it down. The problem was he didn't have explosives. But he did have bullets. And he had rage. And sometimes that was enough. When I start shooting, he told Lucia, you run for the basement entrance. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. Just run. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Domenico checked his magazine. 12 rounds left. Or, I'll buy you enough time to escape. Either way, you're getting out of this mountain alive. And my son. My men are getting him now. Franco and Luca won't fail. Lucia nodded slowly, understanding that she might die here, that Domenico might die here, but Marco would live. Sometimes that was all a parent could ask for. Thank you, she whispered. Thank me when we're drinking coffee in my office. Domenico raised his weapon toward the limestone column. Now run. Lucia ran. And Domenico pulled the trigger. The cave exploded with sound and fury. And somewhere above them, Vincent Corso's perfect plan began to crumble into ash. The limestone column shattered like bone. Domenico emptied his magazine into the support structure, each bullet striking exactly where the water had already weakened the stone. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling, chunks of rock raining down in a preliminary collapse. He ran. Behind him, the cave roared like a living thing dying. Tons of rock cascaded down, sealing the passage they'd just traveled. Dust billowed through the tunnel, choking and blinding. Domenico crashed into Lucia as she stumbled in the darkness, catching her before she fell. Keep moving, he shouted over the thunder of falling stone. They scrambled forward, half running, half crawling through the narrowing passage. The ceiling dropped lower, forcing them onto their bellies. Water rushed past their faces, rising rapidly as the collapse blocked the creek's normal flow. The cave was flooding. There. Lucia pointed ahead with her flashlight. The basement entrance. A rusted metal grate set into the cave ceiling. No, the mill's floor. Domenico could see wooden planks beyond it, hear footsteps and voices above. Vincent's men, searching. He reached the grate and pushed. It didn't budge. Locked or rusted shut. He couldn't tell which. Water was rising faster now, already up to their chests. Move aside, Lucia said. She raised the pistol she'd taken from Vincent's men and fired 3 shots at the grate's hinges. The sound was deafening in the confined space. Metal shrieked as the hinges gave way. Domenico slammed his shoulder into the grate.
Once. Twice.
On the third impact, it flew open. He hauled himself up into the basement of the old mill, then reached back to pull Lucia through. Water gushed up after them, flooding the basement floor. They collapsed onto rotting wood, gasping, soaked and freezing. Above them, footsteps thundered. Voices shouted. Basement. Someone's in the basement. No time, Domenico gasped. He dragged Lucia behind a stack of moldy wooden crates just as flashlight beams cut through the darkness. 3 men descended the stairs, assault rifles raised. Professional. Military-grade equipment. These weren't street thugs. These were Vincent's elite soldiers. Domenico had no ammunition left. His gun was an empty paperweight. Beside him, Lucia had maybe 3 rounds remaining in her stolen pistol. 3 bullets. 3 men. She'd have to be perfect. The soldiers spread out, sweeping the basement with tactical precision. One moved toward the flooding grate, kneeling to examine it. The second covered him. The third moved toward the crates where Domenico and Lucia hid. Domenico's hand found a piece of broken pipe on the floor. Not much of a weapon, but it would have to do. The soldier rounded the crates, rifle raised. Lucia shot him in the throat. The other 2 spun toward the sound. Domenico threw the pipe, striking the nearest soldier in the face. The man stumbled backward, and Lucia's second bullet caught him in the chest.
He dropped.
The third soldier opened fire, bullets chewing through the crates. Wood exploded into splinters. Domenico tackled Lucia, rolling them both behind a support pillar as automatic fire tore apart their cover.
Click, click, click.
The soldier's magazine was empty. He reached for a fresh one. Lucia's final bullet took him between the eyes. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. 3 bullets. Domenico breathed. 3 men. Papa taught me to shoot before I could write. Lucia's hands were shaking as she dropped the now empty pistol. He said in the mountains, you don't get second chances. Domenico grabbed one of the fallen soldier's rifles, checking the magazine.
Full.
30 rounds. He took a second rifle and spare magazines from the other bodies. Can you shoot? He asked Lucia. Not with cracked ribs and a sprained ankle. But I can reload. She took the magazines, stuffing them into her pockets despite obvious pain. And I can limp fast when motivated. Footsteps hammered on the floor above. More soldiers responding to the gunfire. Domenico estimated at least 10 men still in the building, maybe more outside. We go up, he decided. Fast and violent. They'll expect us to hide or retreat. We do the opposite. That's insane. You said that about collapsing the cave. Domenico moved toward the stairs, rifle raised. But here we are. They climbed quickly, Lucia limping behind him, but keeping pace. The stairs opened into the mill's main floor, a vast space filled with rusted machinery, broken conveyor belts, and massive gears that hadn't turned in decades. Moonlight streamed through holes in the roof, creating islands of visibility in an ocean of shadow. And there, standing in the center of the room like a general surveying his domain, was Vincent Corso. He wasn't alone. 8 men surrounded him, all armed, all alert. They'd heard the gunfire from below and were positioned in defensive formation. Vincent smiled when he saw Domenico emerge from the stairwell. You just don't die, do you? Vincent called across the space. I've tried ambushes, snipers, traps. You keep coming like some kind of avenging angel. Where's Marco? Domenico demanded, his rifle steady on Vincent's chest. Safe. I told you. Cooperate and he lives. Vincent spread his hands, the gesture almost genuine. I'm not a monster, Domenico. I don't hurt children. This is just business. Business. Lucia's voice rang out, sharp and furious. You tortured me for 3 days. You tried to make me betray a good man. And you refused, Vincent shrugged. Which, I admit, I didn't expect. Loyalty like that is rare. Admirable, even. But ultimately pointless, he looked at Domenico. You see what your sentimentality has cost? 3 of my men dead. The ranger station destroyed. And for what? 1 broken courier and a briefcase of contracts. For what's right, Domenico said quietly. Vincent laughed, not mockery, but genuine amusement. Right? Domenico, we're criminals. There is no right. There's only strong and weak. Profitable and unprofitable. You've gotten weak chasing legitimacy. The men know it. Your enemies smell it. I'm doing you a favor, really. By betraying me? By ending your misery. You're trying to be something you're not, a legitimate businessman. But we're monsters, Domenico. Both of us. We were born in blood, and we'll die in blood. The only question is whose blood and when. Domenico felt Lucia press a fresh magazine into his hand, her movements subtle.
You're wrong, he said.
We're not born anything. We become what we choose. And I choose to be better than what I was. Noble words from a man surrounded by my soldiers. Vincent's smile widened. Last chance. Put down the rifle. Surrender. The woman can go free. The boy too.
Just you.
That's all I need. No, Lucia said before Domenico could respond. No deals with traitors. Vincent's expression hardened. Then you both die here. Along with the fantasy that honor means anything in our world. He raised his hand to signal his men. The windows exploded inward. Not from bullets, but from bodies. Franco and Luca crashed through the boarded windows on opposite sides of the room, rifles blazing. Vincent's men scattered, trying to establish firing positions, but the surprise was total. And through the main entrance, backlit by moonlight, Anton appeared. Battered but alive, with Marco clutching his hand. Sorry we're late, boss, Anton called out. Traffic was murder. Chaos erupted. Domenico didn't hesitate. He opened fire, dropping 2 of Vincent's soldiers before they could react. Lucia, despite her injuries, took cover behind a rusted gear and began directing fire, calling out positions, coordinating their defensive angles. Vincent's men were skilled, but they were caught in crossfire with no cover. Franco and Luca worked like surgical instruments, each shot deliberate and fatal. Anton pushed Marco behind a support pillar and joined the fight, his pistol barking in steady rhythm. In 90 seconds, it was over. 8 men dead. Vincent alone remained, his hands raised, his perfect smile finally cracked. It's done, Domenico said, approaching slowly. Your coup failed.
Your soldiers are dead.
The Rossi family dies with you tonight, does it? Vincent's eyes gleamed with something manic. You think this ends with me? Domenico, I'm just the beginning. You've made enemies with your softness. Real enemies. People who remember what this territory used to be. Then I'll deal with them too, Domenico raised his rifle. But first, I deal with you. Boss, Franco said quietly. Marco's watching. Domenico glanced at the boy, pressed against the pillar, eyes wide with terror and awe. Marco, who'd come looking for his mother, who'd believed in promises and loyalty and the idea that good men still existed in dark worlds. Could Domenico execute Vincent in front of that child? Could he teach Marco that violence was the only answer? Or could he show him something different? Domenico lowered his rifle. You're finished, he told Vincent. You'll stand trial. Face justice. Real justice, not a bullet. Vincent laughed. Justice? From whom? We're criminals, remember? Then from the law, Domenico pulled out his phone, finally signal. Anton, call the police. Tell them we have a kidnapping suspect, multiple attempted murders, and a criminal conspiracy. You're insane, Vincent breathed. The police will arrest you too. Maybe. But I have evidence. Witnesses. And I have the truth. Domenico looked at Lucia, still standing despite her injuries. Sometimes the truth is enough. And then everything exploded into fire. The explosion came from outside, a white-hot flash followed by the roar of ignited gasoline. Vincent's eyes widened in genuine shock as flames erupted through the mill's eastern wall. This wasn't his plan. Someone else had torched the building.
Out, Domenico shouted.
Everybody out now. The old mill, dry timber soaked in decades of industrial chemicals, became an inferno in seconds. Flames raced up support beams, across the ceiling, consuming everything with terrifying hunger. Lucia stumbled, her injured ankle giving out. Domenico caught her, slinging her arm over his shoulders. I've got you.
Marco.
Lucia's voice cracked with terror. Where's Marco? Anton has him. Domenico pushed toward the main entrance through walls of heat and smoke. Behind them, Vincent ran with his hands still raised, caught between capture and cremation. They burst into the frozen night air, gasping. Franco and Luca were already outside with Anton and Marco. The boy broke free and ran to his mother, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Mama," he sobbed. "Baby, I'm here. I'm here." Lucia collapsed to her knees, holding her son, both of them crying. But Domenico's attention was elsewhere. Figures emerged from the tree line, men in dark clothing, weapons raised. Not Vincent's soldiers. These bore a different symbol on their tactical vests, the silver rose of the Rossi family. And at their head stood a man Domenico recognized even after 6 years.
Alessandro Rossi.
The nephew he'd thought died in the purge. "Domenico Valeri," Alessandro called out, his voice young but hardened by hate. "You kill my family, burned our empire. Tonight, I return the favor." Alessandro, Domenico kept his rifle lowered, assessing. 15 men, all armed. His own group was exhausted, low on ammunition, and included a wounded woman and a child. The math was impossible. "I thought you were dead. You were supposed to think that. I was 17 when you slaughtered my uncles, my cousins, everyone who carried our name. I survived by hiding among corpses, covered in their blood." Alessandro's smile was a wound. "I've spent 6 years rebuilding, finding soldiers, planning revenge. And Vincent," he gestured at the lieutenant, who stood apart from both groups, "Vincent gave me the perfect opportunity." Vincent's expressions cycled through shock, rage, and calculation. "You were supposed to wait. Let me take control first, then we'd split." "Split?"
Alessandro laughed.
"Why would I share territory with you? You're just a tool, Vincent. A useful traitor who gave me everything I needed, routes, schedules, weaknesses. But I don't negotiate with men who betray their own bosses. That's terrible business." He raised his weapon. Domenico moved before thought, tackling Vincent to the ground as bullets tore through the space they'd occupied. His team scattered, returning fire, but they were outnumbered and surrounded. "Cave system," Lucia shouted, pointing. "Behind the mill, there's another entrance. We'll never make it." Franco fired in controlled bursts, conserving ammunition. "They'll cut us down before we reach cover." Domenico made a calculation. His men, Lucia, Marco, they could run, might survive if someone bought them time. And there was only one way to do that. He had to give Alessandro what he wanted. A target. "Franco." Domenico grabbed his lieutenant's shoulder. "Get everyone to the caves. That's an order." "Boss, no."
"Now."
Domenico shoved him toward the others. "Anton, take Marco and Lucia. Move." "I'm not leaving you," Lucia protested, but Anton was already pulling her back, Marco in his arms. Domenico stood, raising his hands, walking toward Alessandro's line. "You want me? Here I am. Let them go. This is between us." Alessandro's men ceased fire, watching their leader. The young Rossi studied Domenico with eyes full of old pain and new power. "Brave," Alessandro admitted. "Or stupid. But I suppose that's your fatal flaw. You actually care about these people." "It's not a flaw. It's what I'm going to use to destroy you." Alessandro gestured, and 2 of his men grabbed Domenico, forcing him to his knees. "Watch them run, Valeri. Watch them escape while you die. Let your last thought be that your sacrifice saved them." Domenico looked back. His people were retreating, Franco providing covering fire, Luca supporting Lucia, Anton carrying Marco. They'd make it to the caves. They'd survive. That was enough. "Do it," he said quietly. Alessandro raised his pistol, pressing it to Domenico's forehead. "Any last words?" "Yes," Domenico smiled coldly. "You made the same mistake Vincent made." "What mistake?" "You talked too long." The night erupted with sound. Not gunfire, engines. Dozens of them. Vehicles pouring from the forest access roads, headlights blazing. Men in Domenico's colors emerged from SUVs, rifles raised, positions taken with military precision. Alessandro's smile vanished. "That's impossible," Vincent said. "Vincent lied to you too. Domenico's phone had connected before the mill exploded. One message sent, not to the police, but to Roberto at the casino. You think I'd come into these mountains without a contingency plan? I've been buying time since we left the burning ranger station. My men have been tracking my phone's GPS, following at a distance, waiting for the right moment. 50 armed soldiers surrounded Alessandro's 15. The math had changed. Drop your weapons. Roberto's voice boomed through a megaphone. You're surrounded. This is your only chance. Alessandro's men looked at each other, then at their boss. Slowly, rifles lowered. They were mercenaries, not fanatics. They wouldn't die for a lost cause. But Alessandro didn't lower his weapon. His gun still pressed against Domenico's forehead, his finger on the trigger. I can still kill you, Alessandro whispered. Even if I die, you die too. You could, Domenico agreed. But then Marco grows up without a mother. And I promise to protect him. So before you pull that trigger, ask yourself, do you hate me enough to murder a child's last hope? Alessandro's hand trembled. Tears streamed down his face, not from fear, but from the weight of 6 years of grief finally crashing down. You took everything from me, he choked out. My family, my future, everything. I know, Domenico's voice softened. And I won't insult you by saying they deserved it or that it was just business. The truth is, I destroyed your family because they stood in my way. I was ruthless, merciless, the kind of man who made children orphans and called it necessary. Then why shouldn't I do the same to you? Because you're better than I was. Domenico held Alessandro's gaze. You're 17 years old, holding a gun to my head, and you're questioning whether to pull the trigger. At your age, I wouldn't have hesitated. The fact that you are hesitating means you're not me. You're not what I made you. Alessandro's finger trembled on the trigger. I've spent 6 years planning this. I know. And it almost worked. Domenico's voice was steady. But killing me now won't bring them back. It'll just create more orphans. More children like Marco, wondering where their parents went. Is that the legacy you want? To become exactly what you hate. For a long moment, nothing moved. The world held its breath. Then Alessandro lowered the gun. He collapsed to his knees, sobbing, not the tears of a hardened criminal, but of a teenager who'd carried too much weight for too long. I don't know how to stop hating you, he whispered. Then don't. Domenico stood slowly, rubbing his wrists where Alessandro's men had gripped them. Hate me for the rest of your life. I've earned it. But don't become me. Don't let that hate turn you into the kind of man who makes more orphans. Roberto's men moved in, securing Alessandro's soldiers. Vincent, who'd been forgotten in the chaos, tried to run, but Franco was faster. The lieutenant went down hard, face first in the snow. Got him, boss. Domenico walked to where Vincent lay pinned. His former lieutenant looked up with something between fear and defiance. So now what? Vincent spat. You kill me? Prove I was right about you. No, Domenico pulled out his phone, this time actually calling the authorities. Now you face real consequences. Police. Courts. Prison. You wanted to play legitimate? Let's see how you handle legitimate justice. They'll arrest you too. You're a criminal. Maybe. But I have something you don't. Witnesses who'll testify I came here to rescue a kidnapped employee. Self-defense. Protection of life. And Domenico gestured at the burning mill. Alessandro's captured soldiers, the evidence scattered across the snow. Physical proof of conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and attempted coup. The sound of sirens echoed through the mountains. Real authorities this time, drawn by the fire and gunshots. Domenico looked at his people, Franco and Luca, bruised but standing. Anton holding Marco protectively. And Lucia, leaning against a tree, her son pressed against her side, both alive despite everything. Roberto, Domenico said to his second-in-command. Take everyone back to the city. Get Lucia to a hospital. Marco stays with her, under armed guard. Nobody touches them. What about you, boss? Domenico looked at the approaching police lights. I'm going to tell them the truth. All of it. And then we'll see if a man like me can actually change. That's insane, Franco said. They could arrest you. Probably, Domenico smiled. But I promised Marco his mother would come home.
She has.
The rest is just details. As police vehicles surrounded the scene, Domenico stood in the snow, hands raised, ready to face whatever came next. Behind him, the mill collapsed in flames. Ahead, an uncertain future. But for the first time in years, Domenico Valeri felt something he'd forgotten existed.
Hope.
3 weeks later, snow still fell on the city, but softer now. Gentle. The kind that made everything look clean instead of cold. Domenico stood at the window of his office, watching the casino floor below. Business continued as normal. Cards dealt, wheels spun, money changed hands. But everything had changed. The door opened behind him. He didn't turn. The lawyers said you got lucky, Roberto said, settling into a chair. Self-defense claims held up. Witness testimony from Lucia, Marco, Anton, Franco, Luca, all consistent. Police found enough evidence of Vincent's conspiracy and Alessandro's revenge plot that you came out looking almost heroic. Almost, Domenico echoed. The Rossi family is finished. What was left of them scattered after Alessandro's arrest. Vincent's awaiting trial, 27 counts, everything from kidnapping to attempted murder. He'll die in prison, Roberto paused. And Alessandro. Juvenile detention. 5 years, possibility of parole in 3 if he shows rehabilitation. Domenico finally turned. He's 19 now. Still young enough to become something else. You ask the judge for leniency. For a man who tried to kill you. For a boy who was trying to avenge his family. Domenico moved to his desk, where a file lay open. I made him an orphan, Roberto. The least I can do is not turn him into a corpse. Roberto studied his boss with something like awe. You really are trying to change, aren't you? Trying. Domenico looked at the file. Business proposals, all legitimate. Construction contracts. Import-export licenses. Entertainment venues. Nothing that required breaking laws or bones. Trying is all I can do. A knock at the door. Come in, Domenico called. The door opened, and Lucia Marchetti entered. She looked transformed. 3 weeks of medical care, proper rest, and safety had worked miracles. The bruises were faded, the cuts healed. She wore professional clothing, slacks and a blazer, and walked without a limp, though Domenico noticed she still favored her left side slightly. Mr. Valeri, she said formally. You asked to see me? Lucia. Please sit. Domenico gestured to the chair beside Roberto. How are you feeling? Better. The doctors say another 2 weeks and I'll be fully healed. She sat carefully. Marco asks about you constantly. He wants to thank you himself, but I told him you were busy with everything. He can visit anytime. Domenico opened his desk drawer, pulling out an envelope. But that's not why I called you here. Lucia tensed slightly. Am I being let go?
What?
No, Domenico was genuinely surprised. Why would you think that? I failed a delivery, lost the vehicle, got kidnapped, caused you to risk your life and resources. You kept a promise, Domenico cut her off gently. You refused to betray me under torture. You fought your way free, left intelligence for me to follow, and survived against impossible odds. You didn't fail anything, Lucia. You exceeded every expectation I could have had. She blinked rapidly, clearly fighting tears. Then why am I here? Because I'm making you a new offer. He pushed the envelope across the desk. Open it. Lucia did, her hands trembling slightly. Inside were legal documents. She read in silence, her eyes widening with each paragraph. This says I'm being promoted to director of logistics. With a salary increase of, she looked up, stunned. This can't be right. This is 4 times what I make now. You've earned it. More than earned it. Domenico leaned back. I'm restructuring the organization, moving entirely to legitimate operations over the next 2 years. I need people I can trust absolutely. People who understand what loyalty really means. People who, he paused, who won't break under pressure. But I'm just a courier. You were a courier, Roberto spoke up. Now you're the woman who survived 3 days of torture, escaped from trained mercenaries, and killed 2 armed men with 3 bullets. That's not just a courier, Ms. Marchetti. That's leadership material. Lucia looked between them, still processing. What about Marco? This job would mean longer hours, more responsibility. I can't leave him. Which is why the offer includes full benefits, Domenico interrupted. Private school for Marco. Healthcare. Housing allowance. And flexible scheduling. You work when he's at school. Evenings and weekends are yours. No exceptions. I don't understand. Lucia's voice was barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Domenico stood, walking around the desk to face her directly. Because you showed me something I'd forgotten. You stood in that cave, wounded and bleeding, and told me you'd protected those contracts because they represented a clean future for your son. You believed in what I was trying to become more than I believed in it myself. He knelt down, meeting her eyes at level. Lucia, I'm trying to build something different here. Not a criminal empire, but a legitimate business that treats its people with dignity. That allows mothers to raise their sons without fear. That keeps promises. His voice grew thick. I can't do that alone. I need people who share that vision. People like you. A tear rolled down Lucia's cheek. My papa used to say that loyalty flows downward. That a leader who protects his people earns their loyalty, not demands it. Your papa was a wise man. He would have liked you. She wiped her eyes, then extended her hand. I accept your offer, Mr. Valeri. On one condition. Name it. You let Marco call you Uncle Dom. He's been asking for weeks, and I keep telling him it's too familiar, too presumptuous. But he insists that a man who walks into hell to save his mother has earned the title. Domenico's throat tightened. He thought about that night at the casino, a small boy in the snow, frost on his eyelashes, asking for help. He thought about every terrible choice he'd made in his life, every person he'd hurt, every line he'd crossed. And he thought about how one child's belief had changed everything. Tell Marco, his voice cracked slightly. Tell him Uncle Dom said yes, and that I expect him to visit every Sunday for hot chocolate. Lucia smiled, genuine and bright.
He'll hold you to that.
Good. Domenico stood, helping her up. Start next Monday. Roberto will handle the transition. And Lucia? Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. After she left, Roberto remained seated, studying his boss. You really are different, he observed. The old you would have paid her off and sent her away. Too much risk keeping someone who knew so much. The old me created Alessandro Rossi. Domenico returned to the window. Created Vincent Corso. Created a world where children beg strangers for help because the adults in their lives have failed them. He watched the casino floor, seeing it differently now. Not an empire of vice, but people trying to escape their lives for a few hours. Dealers working to pay rent. Security guards supporting families. Cleaning staff sending money to children in other countries. All of them depending on him to be better than he'd been. Roberto, I need you to do something for me. Name it. Set up a fund. For Alessandro Rossi. When he gets out of juvenile detention, I want him to have access to education, job training, therapy, everything he needs to build a legitimate life. Boss, he tried to kill you. I know, but I made him what he was. The least I can do is help him become something else. Domenico turned from the window. And find the families of every person I killed 6 years ago. The Rossi purge. I want them compensated. Generously. Anonymously if they won't accept it openly.
Roberto stood slowly.
That's going to cost millions. I have millions. And they're worthless if I can't sleep at night. Domenico smiled slightly. My father once told me that a man's legacy isn't what he builds, but what he leaves behind when he's gone. I've been building an empire of fear. Time to leave behind something different. What's that? Hope. Domenico looked at the documents on his desk. Contracts, proposals, legitimate business plans. A business where mothers don't have to risk their lives delivering packages. where children don't grow up orphans, where men like Vincent and Alessandro don't see violence as their only path to power. Roberto shook his head, smiling. You're going to change the world, aren't you?
No.
Just my little corner of it. Domenico picked up a photo from his desk, one he'd asked to keep from the police evidence. It showed Marco and Lucia reunited at the hospital, both alive, both safe, both crying with relief. But maybe that's enough. Sunday came. Domenico's office door opened at exactly 3 o'clock, and Marco bounded in, followed by Lucia. Uncle Dom. The boy ran straight to him, wrapping small arms around Domenico's waist. Mama said we could visit every week. She did she? Domenico ruffled Marco's hair, feeling something warm and unfamiliar spread through his chest. Well, I did promise hot chocolate. He'd had Roberto stock the office with supplies, good chocolate, marshmallows, whipped cream. The kind of thing a child would remember years later, when the details of kidnapping and violence faded, but the feeling of safety remained. As he made hot chocolate, Marco chattering excitedly about school and friends and everything important in an 8-year-old's world, Domenico caught Lucia's eye. She mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." He nodded, understanding all that she couldn't say aloud.
Thank you for believing me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing my son home. Thank you for showing me that loyalty matters. Thank you for being the kind of man who keeps promises. Thank you for changing. Later, after Marco had devoured 2 cups of hot chocolate and fallen asleep on the office couch, Lucia spoke quietly. He has nightmares sometimes.
About the snow.
About thinking he'd lost me. That's normal. Domenico pulled a blanket over the sleeping boy. It'll get better with time. Will it? Get better? She looked at him. For any of us. Domenico thought about Alessandro in juvenile detention, about Vincent awaiting trial, about the families he destroyed, and the empire he was dismantling piece by piece. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm going to try. Every day. To be better than yesterday. That's all any of us can do, Lucia smiled. My papa used to say that bravery isn't one big moment. It's 1,000 small choices to do the right thing even when the wrong thing is easier. Your papa really was wise. She looked at her sleeping son. And he'd be proud that Marco has an Uncle Dom who understands that. As they sat in comfortable silence, watching Marco sleep, Domenico realized something profound. He'd spent 20 years building an empire of fear. And in one snow-covered night, a small boy and his mother had shown him how to build something better. A legacy of hope. A promise kept. A future where children didn't have to beg strangers for help because the adults in their lives had become better. Outside, snow continued to fall. But inside, for the first time in years, Domenico Valeri felt warm.
The end.